here we are, our final week of the growth series. We've talked about 5 of the 6, and we actually went in reverse order. I started with the H, hunger for God. That's the idea of reading your Bible and praying and memorizing Scripture, because I think that all of the practices of a growing Christian, when you look at the other ones, they all flow from a deep connection with God and His Spirit that comes through the private spiritual disciplines. Now today, as we've gone in reverse order, we're ending with the G, which is give generously, which is most of the time not a sermon that most people want to hear. It's like, dude, don't talk about my money. You didn't make my money. I made my money, and I get to decide what to do with my money. The church always wants your money, and that's what people think, isn't it? Like the church, they want your money. Now I want you to think about our church for a second. I can't speak for every church. I can talk about our church, though. We don't pass an offering in front of you. Like, we don't come up to you like, hey, you should probably, here you go. Didn't God bless you? Like, shouldn't you bless? Like, in fact, if you've been going to church here for very long, and I've been asked so many times, like, hey, where do we give our tithes and our offerings? We've got 2 boxes in the back of the room. They're not even labeled. You almost have to go out of your way to figure out, how do we give to your church? And God has been providing. And our goal isn't to squeeze you for every penny. Give generously isn't about you giving more money to the church. It is about you living a life of a godly perspective. Like, what is money? What are stuff and possessions? And how do they relate to me in this Christian life? So it's not about you giving more to the church necessarily. It's about you living a life of freedom. We want you to live a life free from sin. We want you to live a life free from the potential pitfalls of riches and possessions and what they bring to a person's life. And I will say that if I get done preaching this sermon and you walk out of here going, man, I think that's all good. I agree with everything. I don't think I have anything to work on. I didn't do a good job preaching. Because we live in America, it's 2024, and as difficult as inflation has been, we have access to so much. We have been blessed with so much. And we're going to see that Paul's going to write to people, and he's going to have some commands for people that are rich. Now, you and I often think of people that are rich, and we always think of somebody else. Somebody who's got nicer vehicles than we have, somebody who has a bigger house than we have, or, newer, nicer toys than we have. It's like, well, yeah, they're rich, but we're struggling to get by. Rich, in biblical terms, if you had more than daily bread, you were rich. So as he writes, and he says, command those who are rich, and you think, yeah, rich people, and you're thinking about somebody else. If you've got more than a day's worth of food stored up in your house, and I've said before, like, my family and I, we could not go grocery shopping for 3 months and have enough food to eat. Like, we could just figure it out. May not be stuff that you like, may not be, like, preferred, dietary things, but, like, you could survive on what I've got in my house for 3 months. Like, in the eyes of the world as a whole, the Junkins family, we are rich. I got to own that. I got to recognize that. And you've got to own that for yourself as well. Because the commands that are given aren't just for somebody else, they're for us. So we're going to be in 1 Timothy chapter 6, verses 6 through 18. If you want to grab your Bible and turn there, we're going to be camped out in that passage of Scripture. And let me just unpack for a moment 2 pitfalls that we need to avoid. 2 extremes that you got to watch out for. And most of the time, if there's an issue, whether it's political or whatever, the extremes are to be avoided at all costs because they usually hold some pretty crazy views. So the 2 extremes in the Christian movement as it pertains to money. On one extreme, you have the idea that money, stuff, and possessions, they are gifts and blessings from God. And if there are things that you don't have but that you really want, you need to ask God, you need to believe in your heart, you need to have faith, you need to name it, you need to claim it, and then God will give it to you. That why would God, as a father, not want to give gifts to his children? And so if you want that brand new truck or you want that tractor, and that may just be me, I don't know, but like, if you got stuff that you're like, man, I really want this, well, then just pray enough and name it and claim it, and God will bless you with it. The problem is that there are a lot of passages that tend to indicate the opposite. So do you remember the rich young ruler? He's at different Gospels stories, but like in Mark chapter 10, there's a guy who comes to Jesus, and he's like, hey, "Good teacher, what must I do to inherit eternal life?" And Jesus says, "You need to keep the commandments." And the guy's like, "I've done all those since I was a boy." And Jesus looked at him, and he loved him, it said. So he's not messing with him. He's not trying to beat him up. He looked at him, and he loved him, and he said, "There's one thing you lack. Go sell everything you have. Give it to the poor. Then come follow me." And the guy went away sad because he had great wealth. Now, when you think about your life and your Christian experience, just imagine like if an angel showed up at your house tonight. "Hey guys, sorry to interrupt TV watching, but I have a message from Jesus." I got a piece of paper here. It says, "Sell everything you have, give it to the poor, move to Africa, become missionaries." Do you guys want? He signed it. Do you guys want to? I can leave the paper for you. You'd be like, "Please tell me I'm dreaming." Like I don't want to sell. Like you got a lot of stuff. I got a lot of stuff. Like Jesus has said it before. At any point, Jesus could say to any of us as his followers, "Sell everything you have, give to the poor, then go do this." So I don't think the idea of like God always wants everyone to have everything that they ever want is biblical. It's not. But on the other side of the spectrum, the other extreme, it's like, if you have stuff and possessions, if you have things in excess of what you need, you're in sin. So if you have like granite or quartz countertops in your house instead of the cheap laminate, you could have used the money instead of getting quartz, and you could have got laminate, you could have given that other money to the poor. Like, what are you doing? What's wrong with you? Kids are starving everywhere. Like, you can't have nice things. I was told that as a kid. My brother and I would break stuff. That's why we can't have nice things. Well, nobody can have nice things. Because if you have nice things, that means somebody is suffering. And their blood is on your hands. And there's that whole conversation. There's another story. Acts chapter 5. Two people named Ananias and Sapphira. They sell a field that they have. They get a certain sum of money. Let's say it was $50,000, just to make the illustration more practical for us. They got $50,000. They kept 15. They gave 35 to the church and said, "Here's what we sold it for 35,000. Here's all the money." And Peter says, "Wasn't this your field to begin with? Like, didn't God bless you with the field? And when you sold it, wasn't the money yours to use at your disposal? You're wanting people to praise you and say, 'Oh my goodness, you sold the field.' Like, keep some of it, keep all of it, keep none. Like, do what you feel led to do by God, but you've not just lied to us, you've lied to the Holy Spirit." And they dropped dead. Ananias dropped dead. A few hours later, Sapphira dropped dead. Like, I think the offering time at that church got a little awkward there for a while, right? It's like, I don't know, should we give? Should we not? I don't know. The last people who gave, they dropped dead. So, but the point is, like, Peter's like, it was yours. It was okay for you to have. And if you want to sell it, give the money to the church, you can do that, but don't lie about how much you made and how much you're giving. Peter could have said, "Wait a minute, you had a field this whole time, you sinful creatures." He didn't say that. So here's the point of it all. We should not obsess with stuff and possessions as if they're going to make us happy, because they never will. But you also shouldn't feel guilty with what God has blessed you with. There is a balancing act that we need to make sure that we are constantly aware of and conscious of. And living in America in 2024, if you think you don't struggle with materialism, you are lying to yourself, because it's everywhere. And we often buy things we don't need to impress people we don't like, because we think that's going to make us more fulfilled or make us feel better about ourselves or whatever. You've heard of like people looking for love in all the wrong places. People are looking for contentment in all the wrong places. So what we're going to find today is that the Apostle Paul is going to give some advice on how we should deal with our money, and then he's going to give some commands to those of us that are rich. And I think deep down, that's probably all of us. Here's what he says in verse 6. "But godliness with contentment is great gain. For we brought nothing into the world, we can take nothing out of it. But if we have food and clothing, we will be content with that." Basically, he's saying if you have your basic needs met, you have enough and you can be content with it. But how do we become content in our culture? Well, if I just had a little bit more, if I had a different car, if I had a bigger house, if I had a different bow to go shoot with, if I had it's always something. If I had that, then I would be content. The King Solomon, he calls that chasing the wind, the book of Ecclesiastes. You think, chasing the wind, think of that picture. If you were just to look outside, there's a guy out there running as fast as he can. I've almost got it. Because even if you think you caught it, you're like, look, I caught the wind. And then there it goes again. Oh, I'm sorry, guys. I got to go catch the wind. But you're going to be running for a long time. You're going to be in great shape. You're going to run more miles than Forrest Gump did in that movie, aren't you? Because you can't catch the wind. And when Solomon uses that picture, that illustration, he's using it specifically about money and possessions. Well, if I just had a little bit more, you're always going to think that. If you think, I'll be content if. Paul's saying, be content with where you're at and what you have. So if you have big, shiny, and new, or you've got well-used, or somewhere in between, you can say, man, I've got what I need and I am content. Now listen, I'm going to say this, I'm trying to defend everything, but I don't care what possessions you have. What I care is what has your allegiance, what has your heart. Now the more stuff you and I have, the more likely we're going to get distracted by all the stuff, and the more time and energy it goes into taking care of the stuff. So if you've got a big yard, and you've got a boat, and you've got a big old mower, and you've got multiple vehicles, and you've got a pool, you got all this stuff you got to take care of, you got to take care of it. So God isn't like, I've given you this, now never wash it, never clean it, never do maintenance on it, just let it, all rust. Like, you need to take care of the stuff God's blessed you with. That takes time, that takes energy, it takes money. So the more that you have, the more effort has to be put into all this. But godliness with contentment, just saying I have what I need, and if I get more, that's awesome. But I don't need it to be content in life. Just think about your life at different stages and what it took to make you content. My wife and I were just reflecting on that this week. When we were just married, we found out that she was going to have a baby. We weren't having the baby, she was. And I got an opportunity to go to St. Louis. And so we moved to St. Louis. I was a minister at a church. And we decided to just live on my income. She was going to stay home with our precious little lamb as he came into the world. And then we had two, so that just extended. So she's going to stay at home. And I remember it was 2010. Things were so tight. Our grocery budget, it's like we put cash in an envelope every week. That's what she bought groceries with. Paper towels, everything came out of that. So it's like I'm using AIM toothpaste, White Rain shampoo because it's 99 cents, right? I was giving myself haircuts, and not like Buzz, I was giving myself fades. I was watching videos online how to do it. I didn't have a gym membership. We never went out to eat. Our cars were paid for. We had no TV. We did have Netflix, the $7.99 version of Netflix. That was our splurge. But we had no forms of entertainment. We had nothing, and we were happy. And I'm not saying that facetiously. We were happy. We made a sacrifice. She wanted to stay home with our kids. We just made it work. And every Christmas, my parents would give us money, and we'd put those, they were in envelopes in our closet. And if we wanted to go out to eat, I'm not talking like to, Citizen Kane's or whatever. I'm talking like McDonald's, because we never went out. We would go to that, and let's go get a couple of double cheeseburgers. They're on the 99-cent menu. Let's go live it up. And it was wonderful. It was a precious time of life. And we were content. Now, there were times where I'm like, I wish I could go golfing. I wish I could have a gym membership. I wish I could go get a haircut at like Great Clips and not, get myself a haircut. But it was such a precious time. It was wonderful. Not because I had a bunch of nice stuff, but because we had each other and that's all we needed. So you think about your life. Some people are never content no matter what they have. They're always chasing the wind. Some people find a way to be content with very little. You get to be one of those two people. You can constantly chase the wind, or you can say, what I have is enough, and I'm blessed, and I'm thankful, and that's the life that I want to live. Because what happens? What happens if you're constantly consumed with, I need more, I want to make more, I want to have more? What happens to that type of person? Well, Paul tells us in verse 9. He says, those who want to get rich fall into temptation and a trap and the many foolish and harmful desires that plunge people into ruin and destruction. So the more that you have and the more that you want and you're trying to accumulate, the more distracted you're going to be from what's important and the more tension and chaos you're going to bring about in your life. There's a statistic, Dave Ramsey shares it. Of all the marriages that end in divorce, 75% say that money problems was either the leading cause or one of the leading causes. That there's tension. When you have a spender and a saver, there's tension. Or when you have even two people who are balanced, and one wants to buy home decor and one wants to buy golf clubs, so there's not enough to do both. Now there's tension and fighting. I work hard and I never get to have anything nice and I make sad. And then like, brrr, you don't respect me. And it's just chaos. Why? Because you think that new golf clubs are going to help that broken swing that you've got. If you swing the golf club correctly, you can have pretty cheap golf clubs and beat just about anybody. I know because I've seen people do it. I wasn't the good golfer, but I saw a guy, he had a wooden driver, and he outdrove everybody. How does that happen? But anyway, it doesn't matter if you get your hands on this or not. The more that you obsess over it, you bring about all kinds of pain and issue. And he goes on, he says, the love of money is a root of all kinds of evil. He does not say that money and having money is the root of all kinds of evil, but loving money. This means you could have no money, love it passionately, and still it's the root of all kinds of evil in your life. And you could have 7 figures in your bank account or in your retirement fund, not love money, and be okay. The issue isn't how much you have, the issue is how much has your heart. And some people, eager for money, have wandered from the faith and pierced themselves with many griefs. The gifts that God gives to us, and I do believe that they're gifts that God gives to us, we elevate those and we obsess over those to where they become our God in and of ourselves. And the thing I don't like about the prosperity gospel and name it and claim it theology is Jesus isn't enough for you. Jesus is a means to an end. He's something that you use or someone you use to get something else. What you really want is not God in your life. You really want the stuff that God's going to give you. The thing that you want the most becomes your God. It becomes what you sacrifice for. It becomes what you serve. And when he says that they have pierced themselves with many griefs, they have wandered from the faith, he's saying you've been given these gifts, but just like a dangling carrot, the devil just kind of gets you, there's more, and you start to chase after that stuff. Before you know it, you go falling off a cliff. Jesus, in one of his parables, he talks about a farmer sowing seed in his field, and there's different types of soil that the seed goes into. And the picture that's presented is the gospel gets spread and it gets planted in the different types of human hearts. One of the types of human hearts, it's among the thorns and the thistles. And when the plant grows up, it says that it gets choked out by the worries of this life and the deceitfulness of wealth. That there's a bait and switch game. And you and I sometimes think, if we're not careful, if I had this, then I can be happy, content, fulfilled, joyful, etc. Never happens. And the more that you're willing to sacrifice and give up and lie, cheat, and steal potentially to get more junk that's going to end up in a landfill at some point in your life, you may wander from the faith and pierce yourself with many griefs. That's like, okay, so what's the solution here? What are we supposed to do about this? It's not wrong to have stuff. It's wrong that stuff has you. So how do we manage? How do we balance all of that? Well, Paul tells us, command those who are rich in this present age, in this present world, not to be arrogant or put their hope in wealth, which is so uncertain, but to put their hope in God who richly provides us with everything for our enjoyment. Different terms people use like financial security. People like, I want to have financial security. And Paul's like wealth is so uncertain. You may have a lot of money in the stock market. It's sitting there just ready for you to retire. You know stock markets can crash, right? It's happened before in our nation's history. Now, I'm not saying the stock market's a bad investment. Okay, I've got a Roth IRA. I've got money going there. But listen, if it crashes, God's not going to be like, whoops, I didn't see that. Did you guys see that coming? Which angel's supposed to watch CNBC or, Fox Business to be monitoring the stock market? This happened, and now, God's never surprised by that stuff. God will take care of you. And I'm okay with you having, an emergency fund in your savings account, 3 to 6 months saved up. And I've heard preachers say before, like, well, you're just showing lack of faith in God. God should take care of the emergencies. You shouldn't be storing up money. I'm like, that's called being a responsible adult. I don't know. And like some preachers are like, you shouldn't save up for retirement. Listen, I don't think I'm going to preach till I'm dead. That's my hope and prayer at least. Now, I'm not 40 yet, but, maybe by the time I'm like 70, not only I'll be tired of me, but y'all will be tired of me as well. Like, you should probably go to pasture now. Like, put the pastor out to pasture and go move to Florida or something and whatever it is, right? It's not wrong to save for retirement. It's not wrong to have all that stuff, but just listen. We have no guarantee that money's going to be there when you're ready to retire or whatever. Because wealth, money, possessions, they are uncertain. Don't put your hope and your faith in those. Rather, put your faith in God. Make him the top priority. And if you find yourself getting, hey, did you see what the S&P 500 is doing? That's a term I heard. I don't really know what it means. But like, you hear these terms, you're like, it's down. People say it's down. Oh no, it's down. You get freaked out. Just like, hey God, I'm doing my best to be a responsible adult. I'm doing my best to save. But my finances are in your hands. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Don't put your hope in green paper with former political leaders' pictures on it. It's not a real thing, right? Put your hope in God. And he goes on to say, command those who are rich, command them to do good, to be rich in good deeds, and to be generous and willing to share. Okay, think about this. Do good things for people. Be rich in good deeds and be generous and willing to share. Be open-handed with what you've been given from God. Maybe God blessed you so that you can be a blessing to somebody else. And in this way, if you're generous and willing to share, in this way, you're going to store up for yourself treasures as a firm foundation for the coming age so that they may take hold of the life that is truly life. Here's what he's saying. You might say about something, oh, this is the good life. And you might be on vacation in Florida at the most beautiful beach and the waves are just pretty and there's not a cloud in the sky. You kick your feet up and you're like, this is the life. That's a blessing God's given you. I'm not saying don't go on vacation. But that isn't the life. There's a life that comes after this life that is truly life. That's the life we need to be investing in. Jesus says in the Sermon on the Mount, don't store up for yourself treasures on earth where moth and rust destroy, where thieves can break in and steal, where that wealth is so uncertain. Instead, store up for yourself treasures in heaven where those things can't happen and they'll last forever. Make sacrifices in the here and now to invest in the life to come, because no matter how awesome that car is that you want to buy, or how awesome that house, or whatever it is that you're like, oh, if I just had this. When you are in God's presence forever, I don't know how long it's going to take for you to stop caring about earth, but I think like a millisecond. You're not going to be up there going, boy, I wish I could have had a fill in the blank. Those Tesla cars, I wish I could have had one of those electric cars and only drive 200 miles and sit and charge it for 8 hours at a time. I don't know what, but like, maybe, I don't know what it is for you, but whatever it is for you, if I just would have had that while I was on earth, you're not going to think about that in heaven. Earth is going to be like just such a blink compared to your time in heaven. So don't spend all your time and energy investing in this kingdom. Spend more of it investing in that one. All right, let's get to application. Number one, let's talk about those of you who have kids that you're still in charge of. Do not give your kids everything that they want when they want it. I know you want to bless your kids. I get it. I want to bless my kids too. But you can transition over into spoiling very easily, can't you? And what we have, potentially, is a generation coming up. They don't understand the concept of saving and waiting and delayed gratification. They want it immediately. So you could get a credit card so easily, can't you? And so, well, I can't afford it, but if I got a credit card and I put it on the credit, I can afford it. I can make payments on it. And I can buy $1,000 worth of clothes and pay the minimum payment, and in 27 years have it paid off finally after I paid $4,000 for the thing, right? But we don't, it's like, no, just, you don't, do you have shoes? You don't need to buy new shoes. You have the shoes. Just can be content with those. But those are Jordans, or, oh, I really need those boots, or, purses and whatever it is that people chase. Like we get ourselves caught up with it, don't we? So our kids, you want a new pair of shoes? Let's go pick out a pair of shoes. Now listen, if your kid's toes are coming out the end of the shoes, it's time to buy a new pair of shoes. But it's okay for your kids to want for things. It's okay for them to learn the value of hard work and not be like baby birds in the nest, just being fed all the time. Because you're going to transfer dependence on you to dependence on the government, and we all lose, okay? I don't know if you've seen that in our world today, but it's there. So don't buy your kids everything that they want when they want it. Number two, in your own life, be okay with spending money on things, and it's okay to not buy the cheapest thing always. But I also think we should avoid buying the most expensive thing that we can afford and try to be content with less. Bob Russell had a great line. He was a preacher in Kentucky for a long time. And he says, whatever I can afford, I always buy less. So he's like, I could afford a Lexus if I wanted it. I bought a Toyota. Is it wrong for you to have a Lexus? No. But his thing is like, I'm just going to I could buy a house that's 2,000 square feet in this neighborhood. I decided to buy a house that was 1,500 square feet in this neighborhood. I can afford this. I'm going to be happy with less. And just on down the line it goes. Not how much can I accumulate? How much can I get? Can I afford the monthly payments on this? Ooh, I should buy that then. I could afford this, but I'm going to buy less. It's just a great principle to live by. And then, like, you may struggle with legalism. The Bible does not tell us what it is that you can or cannot own. So he doesn't say command those who are rich to get rid of everything. He doesn't say it's a condition of your heart. You can't see it from the outside looking in. It is only from like the inside that you can determine, am I becoming materialistic or not? But be mindful of what our culture is trying to do to us. That you don't get bit by that bug. Like you see all these advertisements and their companies spend billions of dollars to get you to buy their little toy or trinket. Whether or not you buy it isn't the issue. It's, I think this is more of a status symbol if I have this as opposed to that. Or wouldn't I be happier if I had this as opposed to that? And then you start obsessing over it. And sometimes you get something in the mail or an email sent to you, or you're scrolling through Facebook, and it's like, 50% off store-wide. You don't need the thing that they're selling, but you're like, I'm saving money here. But you're still spending money. You know how that math works, right? I saved $50, but you had to spend $50 to get, and you didn't need to spend the $50. But we get ourselves all in this little cycle. So there's a balance here. Like, for instance, let me give you a for instance. We just bought my wife a new van. We kind of had to because she totaled the other one. She fought a deer with her van. The deer won, okay? So now we had to go buy a van. And I'm like, this is a nice van. It is a 2018 with 90,000 miles. So it ain't new. It's new to us. But every time I get in, I'm like, ooh. In fact, Titus was like, I think you like the van more than Mom does. I'm like, I kind of do. It's really nice. But if you see what they have in vehicles now, you just walk around like, they have all of these like add-ons and all this stuff and heated seats and cooled seats and rear entertainment. So they have all this stuff and it's like, ooh. And you start to go, boy, that'd be nice to have. And not wrong to get it, but be careful not to get bit to say, I think I would be happier in this as opposed to that. Now you're chasing the wind. But at the same time, and I had to work with myself, I don't want to feel guilty about buying the vehicle because it's something that you need. And for my wife and my kids, I would rather them not be in a vehicle that I'm worried about breaking down all the time. They do have Life 360, but I don't want alerts. It looks like your wife just broke down again. Like, okay, that's not good. Like, I don't want to buy that vehicle. And her van before had over 200,000 miles. My car's got over 220,000 miles. I'm going to drive it till it dies. A slow, painful death, most assuredly. Because I'm content with what I have. I want freedom in my life. Not to be chasing after the wind, not to try to keep up with the Joneses. Nobody here's named Jones, right? That's not a direction at you. Not to try to keep up with the Joneses. My in-laws, they're the Joneses. But Like we get ourselves caught up, and I would rather just say, oh Lord, thank you for what you've given me. I'm content with less. And I think one of the keys to being open-handed is being obedient, to be generous, be willing to share. Tithing is a part of that. We have boxes in the back, and you put your offering in. Tithing is a Old Testament practice that gets brought in the New. It means 10%, literally 10%. If you're giving 0%, 10 looks unreasonable, unrealistic. With every situation in your life, we want you to make progress. So you go from 0 to 2, and then the next year you go to 3, and then you go to 4.5 or whatever. That you continue to make progress in this, not because God needs your money. He doesn't need your money. But because in order for riches and wealth not to get a grip on your heart, for you to be plagued with many griefs, wander from the faith, and go into despair and destruction, in order for that to happen, you have to be more open-handed and obedient to God. There's more freedom and generosity than there is keeping it all and hoarding it up. You may not believe that yet. But given enough time, everybody gets there. Because the most miserable people on the planet, just look at our nation, the most miserable people are oftentimes the ones who have the most. More money, more problems. That's a P. Diddy quote from a song. And I just want to say, God, I'm going to be open-handed. You want to put stuff in my hands? You want to take stuff away? I'm going to be thankful for what you've given to me. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done. And those people that are content have freedom, and their lives are so much better off. Not because they have more, but actually because they have less. There's one person who gets to determine if you're going to chase the wind or be content with what God has given you, and that's you.